Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ericka and Erin here for the next series of the E&E series, I should say, the next segment. And for those of you who don't know, this is an opportunity that we've decided to embark upon, or, this is something that we're doing just to bring awareness to where we are socially. And we decided that as we are learning and navigating our way through what it means to be in this social climate right now, understanding why Black Lives Matter, why we're having these social conversations, that we wanted to do our part. And so we are bringing to you the E&E series. Yes, it stands for Ericka and Erin, but more importantly, Education and Enlightenment. So today we are going to be sharing a topic that has a lot of layers to it, but we're just going to kind of dig into it at the surface here now, and then we're hoping that you will do some more research with some of the resources that we're going to share with you. So today, whatever time you happen to be seeing this, we're going to be talking about what? Unconscious bias.
Unconscious bias, or implicit bias, as you may have also heard it. But it's essentially the idea that we as humans carry certain outlooks that help us to understand or shape understandings of our world, of our environments that we're in, or to simply help shape perceptions. So, as simplypsychology.org puts it, I'm going to read this definition, but it refers to the attitudes or stereotypes that affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in unconscious ways, making them difficult to control. Now, I figured we could kind of break this down a little bit in saying that bias is essentially prejudice, either in favor of or against a thing, a person, people, groups of people, etc. And then unconscious, of course, meaning or simply being unaware of or not conscious of doing so. So there are a million different types of unconscious biases out there, and each of us holds, at least a few, whether it's preferring certain names over other names because they are more white sounding, or holding similarity bias or confirmation bias, which is essentially when we kind of create our own way of thinking or make up, or I guess, I don't know, what would you say, make up our mind about something.
Yeah, before we even have an opportunity to have the facts behind it.
Yeah, and then see something that confirms that way of thinking. Or gender bias, which Forbes, there's an article in Forbes that gives a great example of gender bias, and we'll link or make the things that we're talking about, whether it's the definitions, the examples, whatever, easily accessible. But the gender bias example that they give, so imagine you are on an iPhone and you search, whether it's in your toolbox, text box, maybe it's just on Google, something like CEO, CFO, boss, and 9 times out of 10 what comes up is a man in a suit, or the emoji of a man in a suit. Shocking that sexism exists. But seeing that is kind of what reinforces our gendered stereotypes that we that structure kind of our society and the things that we hold in society. And, that might be a very simple example, but imagine how that translates to lots of different things in relating to biases in our own lives.
And we often think of biases as just around sex and gender. But as Erin said, there's so many biases that we have. There's even an unconscious bias about tall people. The perception is that tall people are smarter. Now, I'm tall, so I like to think that that's true. But the reality of it is, in a joking sort of way, is that there's so much that shapes our perception. And where do these come from? Unconscious biases come from our history. It comes from what we've been taught. It comes from our culture. And so all of these things help to frame or shape what we think about a person or a group of people. And so once we understand what our biases are, then we can try to tap into at least being aware of them, number one, and number two, reshaping how we are seeing a person or a group of people based on aligning what we think with factual information. And I think you were going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that kind of the problem with these associations is that they aren't always accurate. Of course, we know, like the example I just gave of the CEO and the man. Does that mean that CEOs can't be women or women can't hold positions of power? Absolutely not, and we know that. But these biases are either based on inaccurate pieces of information that we have been given or received, or they're based off of experiences that may have just been coincidences and not based in actual fact. So, and like you said, the things that influence these things are things that we see or encounter, experience in our everyday lives, whether it's media or social media or movies and TV, where a lot of the time we see Black and brown people being criminals or doing things that they're not supposed to be doing, or, and so we kind of make that an association and hold on to it without really knowing it a lot of the time. But it's important to note that these unconscious biases that we hold may not even be, an accurate reflection of how we consciously think about things or what we consciously believe, but they still affect our decision-making processes every single day.
And just to kind of give an example, the whole reason why we're doing this is because we recognize the social climate that we're in. So we talk about unconscious biases. Let's take, for instance, what we've been seeing in the media recently. When you see that a Black man has been shot, paralyzed from the waist down, or that he has been killed by a white police officer. So when you look at that and you compare that to other videos that you've seen where perhaps there is a white suspect or something's going on and police are surrounding someone who is white, the reaction is very different. And so unconscious bias says that, okay, here is a Black man or a Black woman, and so my thought is this must be a criminal. This person probably did something wrong. Okay, now whether that's true or not, the perception is already there. And so how does the unconscious bias show up in action? Well, sometimes we've seen it that there is a different reaction to a Black suspect or Black person who is stopped by the police for whatever reason versus a white person. And we've seen the videos where I mentioned this before in another video that I did some time ago, where you see a white suspect, he's wielding a knife, and there's all kinds of coddling that's happening with this person versus what we've seen with people of color. So unconscious bias shows up in how we react to certain situations, how we respond to people, the things that we say about people, just because we have this unconscious bias of how they must be because of the color of their skin, because of, their gender, because of their sexual orientation, whatever it is. So we're just bringing this to light tonight because unconscious bias has so many different layers. There's absolutely no way we could cover everything about it in this conversation, but we at least wanted to bring it to the forefront because we all have them. And for us to think that we don't have biases is a myth. We do. And if I could just be very frank, I actually got to be transparent last week. You don't mind me telling this story about when I was on my way to where was I going? I don't even know where I was going. And I happened to see a gentleman walking down the street. This is a white young man, and he had on a long winter coat. Now it was about 85, 90 degrees last week. And immediately, as I was driving by, I saw him out of the side of my eye, and I did a double take. And I thought, well, that's strange. And I debated on whether to call the police. Because in my mind, my history says that there have been incidents where we've had mass shootings with people wearing long coats. I'm just telling you how it shows up. And so I picked up my phone because I was at a light. I picked up the phone. I'm like, no, I shouldn't call. I put the phone down. I get to the gas station and I called the police. And I said, this is something that I just happened to see this, and I described it, and I was uncomfortable about it, and I was uncomfortable even as I was sharing this with the police. And when I hung up the phone, I realized here is my unconscious bias. And here's how it showed up. I called the police. Now, we all know about the woman in Central Park who also called the police on a black bird watcher. But I had to call my daughter, and I was like, Erin, this is what I just did. Can you help me figure out, like, did I do the right thing? Because I felt like I did something wrong, and I was trying to justify what I did in comparison to the woman in Central Park. I'm just telling you, we all have them. And it shows up in ways that we may not even recognize or expect. And I was trying to justify my action because I said, well, at least, I wasn't calling to say, get hysterical and say, a black man is getting ready to hurt me. I didn't do that. I called and I said, hey, listen, here's what I see. It's very strange. I'm not sure. This person has on a long winter coat and it's about 90 degrees outside. It might be something you want to look at. But nonetheless, that was my action. So it shows up because we sometimes make decisions and we make perceptions about people and situations, and there might not be any reason. So she had to check me. What did you say to me?
Just that it could, the reverse. And we hear a lot about these stories, and the exact opposite could happen with a white woman and a black man. Yeah. And we look at that and say, kind of like a mind your business type of way in just the conversation that we had. So I was like, I don't know that I agreed with that. Mm-hmm. Because again, the same exact thing can be thrown back in our face. Absolutely. And it has been repeatedly. So I disagreed with that. But, I think that with all of that being said, in order to reverse that, and reverse these, or attempt to, and begin to reverse these unconscious biases, we have to become more aware of them in naming them and giving them a label, and, taking a step back to learn about them and, work to change them in order to change the world. Because we may not mean to speak down upon groups of people with the intention of hurting them when they're not around, but sometimes we do. And we may not mean to look down upon someone after we've learned something about them. Of course, not having all of the details, because whoever does. Right. But sometimes we do. Mm-hmm. And, maybe police officers in America don't mean to treat black and brown people differently. But sometimes they do. Yeah. So by being able to be more conscious of those things, and and the things that we do, the things that we say, what we practice every single day, we can help our own selves, our generations and younger generations to come, by encouraging them to ditch those unconscious behaviors. Yeah. Because that's what makes a difference at the end of the day, being able to check yourself and bring it back. And that's what she did for me. So when we talk about, well, how do I deal with it, is first of all recognizing it. Because even in that moment, I was like, okay, this feels like it's not right. Here's my unconscious bias kicking in, and here's how it showed up. So I had to use her as my sounding board. So because I was able to do that, now it helps me, okay, in the next situation, what am I doing? Is this something is this my perception of something, and I'm making an assumption based on an experience, based on a conversation, based on culture, history, whatever it is, it helps me to check, or help me to check myself. So that's what we're encouraging you to do. So this whole topic, as I said, there's no way we can get into all the details about it, but we did want to at least just start with the surface. You can do your research. I know you have some resources that you wanted to, I don't know if we're going to share them now. We can put them in the description. There's a couple just like definition, one of the first one I shared of the definition, and then the Forbes article, and then there's a couple TED Talk type of things and whatever that we'll put in a description.
And so if you want to figure out, well, what are my unconscious biases, like what are they, we're also going to post a link to an online assessment that you can take, Project Implicit, so that you can start to define what are they and how do they show up, or at least start asking yourself that question, and have those conversations with your family, with your friends, because unconscious bias does exist. It does cause us to react to people and to groups in a specific kind of way. And the more we know about it, the more we understand what it is and what ours are personally, the more we can tap into how we can right the ship, or at least get in touch with how we should respond differently, knowing that we understand what they are for ourselves or for us. I don't know how that came out, but you guys get it. So anyway, we appreciate you for joining us for the E&E series. Come back. We'll be sharing the next topic next week. So you'll want to check us out on Facebook Live and on Instagram Live. So do share out with your friends. Let them know that we're having these conversations. And we can't wait to bring you the next topic. So talk to you soon. Bye.
Is that okay?